She's been to Hudson, so some of you have had a chance to meet her. She is with us today to talk with us about the results of the feasibility study that a whole lot of you participated in. Thank you very much. I think we had a really great response on that. 102. That's up from the 99. Here's all the hand. So I'm going to turn it over to Leslie.
All right.
You should have a copy of the case statement. We made some copies so you can take notes as she talks through the results, or you can just refresh your memory about what the projects were. Leslie.
Okay. It's great to be back. I was just saying, I feel like I was here last week, but that's time flies.
No, the weather's better.
I am thrilled to be back with all of you with this comprehensive report. This is, well, I don't know that I could do louder than that. Is this loud enough for your? Okay. We're recording this for others who are at football games and other things like that. The entire report is available to you all. It's your report, it's your results. This is your feasibility study. There is this PowerPoint if you want that by email or print it out. And then the entire report would be available as well. You could ask to see that. And there will be 3 bound copies of the full report coming next week to the office. You could probably check out at the office. There are lots of comments. We report all of the comments that were made by everyone, word for word. We don't summarize the comments. They're not attributed, of course, but it's a good read. It's really nice to read through some of the comments and reflections. People take a good long time and make some thoughtful response. So this is your response. 68% response rate to the survey out of 150. 99% of that 68% are in favor of a capital campaign, some with reservations. And those willing to contribute at this time is 72%. We had a fairly, maybe a 20% or so percentage.
So we could see the screen.
I know, if you can come over here, it'd be easier, because I can't see my screen.
Oh, sorry.
About 20% did not indicate a range of giving. So that's where, there are people who were in favor of giving but unable to really answer how much they would contribute at this time. Okay, so your priorities. These are all the projects. When you were asked in the survey whether this was a high, medium, or low priority for you, this is the calculation of that. So the parish hall was the winner in all of that. There was a lot of excitement about fixing up this space. And if you can't hear me, a little upgrading your sound system might work. Although that was not ranked as high, but you might want to consider that. What is the upper room and kitchen was at the low end. So this is meant to just give the vestry some guidelines on decision making when they adjust what you're going to move forward with in a campaign. This was everything, and I don't think the vestry thought that you'd be able to do every project and every desire that you had, but I encourage churches to put everything into their feasibility study so you can see where it falls out. There was no real objection to anything.
Could you go back to the slide? We got a question of that last
Yeah.
time. The numbers on the left side, what do they represent? Is that a percentage?
People, 70 responses.
70 people out of
102.
So it's about the same as percentage.
Yeah.
So we also break break down the priorities depending on whether there were a low, so the high, medium, and low, there's different points given to that, and the object or don't have enough information, those were the 5 responses. So numerically, it usually comes out to the same as the bar graph. The parish hall was at at the high end, with the upper room at the low end. Questions about that?
Sorry, people didn't want the wheelchair lift, because I think we should be handicap accessible.
The wheelchair lift. I think the concern there was, it didn't get you too much. It's going to a floor that's maybe not used as much, and maybe rethinking that end of things makes a little bit more sense at this point. I know that there's concern about getting up to the office accessibility, but, there might be a
The
different option.
upstairs can't be used without the wheelchair lift, so the two go together. They're both at about the same rank.
You gotta walk up the stairs.
But we'd have more use if more people could get up there.
Right.
Well, and then there were comments that people who have accessibility needs could be meeting down in the new space. So that's something the vestry is gonna weigh, to see really where the priorities are, where the money is, how much they have, and any future plans, and to wrestle with that. And they will be getting back to you. They're meeting at the end of the month, and they will be reporting back their discussions and things that they are thinking about. Communications will remain wide open. There was that question about what does the parish have in its favor and what are some concerns. Charlotte and the staff, there was just really nice positive comments there. Lots of new families and energy. Sense of renewal, feeling of having healed from the past. There were really quite a few, kind of made my heart jump a little. That, overall the comments were so positive and hopeful, and I encourage you to read the comments, because this was really one of the nicest reports I've had to report out. I have successful reports, but this just was like, feel good. I liked reading the report. The needs are obvious. I love when that's one of the pluses, because here you all are happily worshiping together, and your space doesn't necessarily convey that. And strong, committed, and enthusiastic members. Part of the problems, raising the money is always number one. I never have to change that bullet point. I finally had a church that completed the circle of who has money and who doesn't. I had a church in Chicago that their problem was they had a lot of young 20-somethings who really had no money, So I added that to my list. So if you start, now we can start with 20-somethings or out of college. They have no money. Newly married with children, no money. Next stage is they're going to college.
No money.
No money. Then you get to fixed income. No money. So if we can all agree, nobody has any money, then you'll be very surprised at some of my next slides. Do the younger members have capacity to give and fixed incomes? 2 of them are right there. Overruns and surprises with construction is a real possible problem. Too ambitious for the whole goal. I think most of the responses were that this was too big of a goal. Drum roll. Our recommended goal for you all is 1.6 million for 2 and 200. Again, this goal, 92% of our clients raise or exceed the recommended goal. So this goal is doable. This is your attainable goal. It's higher than I thought it was gonna be. I think it's probably higher than many of you thought as well. The goal tested was basically 2 million.
What does that mean? Goal tested?
That was the total in the case statement.
If we spend everything.
Everything in the case statement
Okay.
was about 2 million. The average of your gifts identified was the 1.1. There's a multiplier put on that depending on response rate and comments and other things. And that's where we get the 1.6. Yeah.
Could you define recommended primary goal, like, what is that?
The recommended primary goal is the amount we recommend be the goal for your campaign. So moving forward, you're gonna have a capital campaign for 1.6 million. Vestry is going to figure out what is in that campaign. So the deal is gonna be, when you get to campaign and you've got your brochure and your pledge card and all, it's gonna say, our goal is 1.6 million, here's what we're going to do. No more, no less, accurate costs. And if we raise this amount, this is what we're doing.
So define, how did you calculate 1.64 to 200?
So we take the average and we apply a multiplier depending on the response rate and other factors in the report. Every time I've argued with this number, it's proven me wrong. I just had a client who was adamant about going higher because they were sure there was more money in the community. And this happens a lot where you're almost arm wrestling, you know, the vestry saying, don't do it, don't do it. What we would do is say a challenge goal. So if you really had a project you wanted on there, you go for this goal and say, but if we raise 1.8 million, we will do this. They didn't want a challenge goal. No challenge goal. We're going for this as our primary goal. Well, they are now stalled at 300,000 under their goal, which is the goal we recommended. So I rely on this number. It's a magic number. You know, the churches, you know, the 8% don't come far away from that. So it's not an easy goal, but it is realistic from the responses. Also, 11 families indicated they've remembered the church in their will. That last question on the feasibility, on the survey, when we get to campaign and the pledge period, we will be finding, and I've talked to a couple of folks already about a plan giving shepherd. So some people who are concentrating on planned giving and keeping it alive and keeping it dusted off, you know. There's periods of times where churches go through there's usually one person who feels strongly about it, takes it on, and does all of this great work, and then leaves or dies, and nobody takes it up, and it sort of goes on the back shelf, like, oh yeah, we have this sort of planned giving thing. And then 20 years later, you get bequests, sort of a mass of them. And nobody knows why. Well, it's because somebody paid attention to it years ago. So we also want to work with you in planned giving to just define what it is, to maybe have a day where it's acknowledged, where bequests that have been received are acknowledged, and for people who have identified themselves as having left the church in their will. So that will be on a parallel track. It has nothing to do with the capital campaign necessarily, but it is something that you want robust and for people to see on your website, all of that. So if you got questions about planned giving, it will be available. It's available now, but we will be looking at it more closely. And we've got 11 families already there, which can be part of your society.
Could you talk about how you got that average of planned gifts? Average of gifts? Where'd that number come from? Did you just add up all those cards?
Well, it's, so
Is it a
you indicated a
projection?
range of giving.
Right,
It's the average of the range
the
of giving.
ranges.
So you did 5 to 10, you add up both of those columns for everybody, and then it's the average.
Makes sense.
You mentioned that 92% of the churches you have worked with have attained the right-hand goal, whatever you called it. How many churches is that? How many churches have you all run a campaign with, roughly?
I have no idea.
Okay.
A lot.
Get back to me.
Me, 20,
20?
but, you know, we've been doing it longer than I've been there.
Uh-huh.
We probably have 60 campaigns a year. We've been doing this since, yeah, and that's, you know, the whole process takes more than a year. So I don't know, I have to add it up, a lot. So this is how your gifts broke down. You had one large lead, you got your lead gift. And then, you know, you have quite a few number of 50,000 in there. I see more of like the 50, between the 10 and the 50 range now is often makes up for your lead gifts. I rarely see the first 3 gifts in reports anymore. Once in a while there's a lead gift, but that 25,000 range is up. That's where people can really stretch and give sacrificially. Like your 10,000 spike. I mean, that's, you've got 20 families at $10,000.
I have a question. I remember in the survey, it asked if this campaign were for a 3-year period.
Right.
You know, and so we put something in there for that, calculating on a 3-year basis. Is this reflecting a 3-year commitment?
Yes.
It is, okay.
Yes. Yep. All of this is 3 years right now. Now, with that said, when it comes to pledging time, if you can give a certain amount over 4 years or 5 years, they can do that too, if you want to take that time to pay. I don't see, I've never done a 5-year campaign since '09. I started working with ECF in 2009. The community is so transient now, and you know, with the coming and going and newcomers, and people sort of lose focus. What are we paying this for? This was 5 years ago. So 3-year campaigns are really the norm. And if there was something you wanted to complete or finish, I'd say take a year or 2 off and then launch a new effort for whatever those other projects are. So maybe it's a mortgage that you can't fully cover with that. We're about to do that in Exeter. And then you've got new people, of course, that you're inviting into it. And that's the one thing you want to do over the 3-year payout is invite new people. As they arrive, you're going to have a beautiful brochure that tells you what Christ Church is all about now, today. And it's a great thing to have for newcomers in newcomer packets. Like, this is us. Look at this, and this is what we're planning. So you remember the gift chart. So this just shows you what is needed and what you've got. So you've got way more $10,000 gifts than, you know, needed. You're almost even on 5. So those lower gifts, but you've got 2 100s. You've got the lead gift. So This is excellent. I just wanted you to see how that breaks out. And that's the high end of the range, for the record. That's the top number. And if you're wondering who's gonna run this campaign and volunteer, I'm changing the slide, because you're all looking for your names. There was a question about who would you want to serve with you, and there was also a question of would you be willing to volunteer. If I go back to that for a second, 50% of the people in the who answered, who did the survey, were unsure about volunteering. So it wasn't a straight yes, but I take that as a yes. You didn't say that. Unsure is a definite yes. So we will be calling on you when we need your help. We're going to need lots of help in the next phase. And I know who all of you are. But Henry Nouwen, and I may have already talked about Henry Nouwen to you all, I probably did, wrote this great little book called The Spirituality of Fundraising. And he just has such a great, it turned my head around as far as this work. And he just said, people have such a need for friendship and for community that fundraising has to be community building. I wonder how many churches and charitable organizations realize that community is one of the greatest gifts they have to offer. If we ask for money, it means we offer a new way of belonging. And I really do believe that in the church setting. I mean, I'm sure nonprofits and hospitals think the same thing, but it really is an extension of your worship community, especially the work you've done in revitalizing who you are and re-energizing. So I'd like you to think about it that way. When we get to asking people for pledges, this is an invitation to community. It's an invitation to be a part of what's going on here at any level of giving. We don't just talk to the 20% in the parish. This is a full-on congregational effort, and we need everybody's participation. So, questions about any of the projects? I know there were some questions in the remarks and in the feedback, about downstairs or the plans here. Is there anything that's still unclear?
I was just looking through the description of all the things that were to be done and how much each project cost. And I was thinking, it's always, of course, the vestry's privilege to be able to pick and choose which sub-projects, what they will be able to take on from each. They don't have to do the entire cost of each project, but they can cherry pick which, maybe smaller aspects of several projects they could do to stay within the framework of the money that's going to be available.
Right. So that's really on the vestry's plate for the end of the month. It's a little more complicated, than picking and choosing. Some projects are connected to other projects, and some aren't. And I don't know the details, the really down and dirty details of all of them. But I think the report gives them a good reference as far as where people's energy is. I mean, obviously this space and community and fellowship and being able to open it to the greater Hudson community seems like a priority for this congregation. So, I see that going forward sort of as a no-brainer. The other pieces, I think will come with more of the technical knowledge. Guy.
He is here.
He is here.
Guy, front row.
Do you want to say anything to that?
To the comment about the vestry picking and
Yeah.
choosing.
Here.
Well, I think your comment of some of the projects are interconnected. Some of the
We
projects.
need a sound system, so you have to stand.
Some of the projects are interconnected, and with the parish hall being the seemingly #1 priority for people, that is the biggest chunk of the entire project. So it would be very difficult to pick and choose within that time frame, and because it affects all the space. Short of that, the others over a long period of time are going to need to be done anyways. Carpeting, painting, those kinds of things. So the big chunk is the parish hall.
Yeah. And I think there's also a time where the vestry ought to figure, could this be an annual thing? Could we build this into our annual budget if it's small enough? And figure out a timeline. Sorry.
Haven't you guys done an estimate of each of these
Yes.
projects?
Yes.
And can we see, based on that estimate, what the 1.6 covers? Isn't that an obvious?
Mm-hmm. With the 1.9, I think. Well,
No.
the 1.9 is what we have estimates on. The 1.6 would be a paring down of the 1.9.
Right.
That has not been done.
But
You
you're
haven't
talking
said
about
what we can cover with 1.6.
No,
You have
because
said
the
what
first
we
time
can-
we saw 1.6 was
Right,
this morning.
okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Other questions? Yes.
How firm are these figures for estimates? I mean, $150,000 for a wheelchair lift
Okay.
is a whole lot more than, kitchen renovations, so undergrowth renovations.
Okay.
Is the,
Well, they're architects' estimates with no firm numbers from contractors. But with the knowledge, these are guys who do hundreds of projects a year, so they know basically this is the scope of what you're doing, this is gonna be your cost per square foot. The wheelchair lift was in at a lower number, and I think Gabe would say, oh, I could do it myself for cheaper than that. Not personally, but he arranges it. He's very knowledgeable. I did projects like this for 10 years for a company, and my experience is, in the end, the architects are not usually far off. They may be over on something, but they're gonna miss it low on something else. So I think initially this is a good start. I think once you get into firmer, are you gonna go ahead with it, you're gonna wanna have contractors come in and give you firmer prices. But even at that, they're gonna say, this is the price as of today. If you don't do this project for another year, wage rates are gonna be up.
And they build contingencies into that, too.
They do. And you wanna be very careful not to cut back on your contingency. Because you may feel good until you find out you have to spend that money anyway. So you're better off scaling the project with the appropriate contingency in it and doing that, rather than cutting back the contingency and trying to do more and ending up with a bridge halfway across the bay and you're out of money. So, yeah.
What was the contingency that they used? What contingency did they use?
Well, they use a soft cost, I think
Soft costs are usually engineering.
well, it's soft cost and contingency at this point in time, James.
Okay.
It's not.
Just curious.
$25, which I don't think.
That's a good number. That's a good number.
Yeah.
That's a good number. One last thing, before I leave. The $196K we showed for maintenance. Is that money that has yet to be raised, or do we already have part of that in hand that has not yet been spent on that?
There is some money in the budget to do things that we know we're gonna have to do, like BB House. I mean, you have to, you're gonna have to repair the siding, you're gonna have to paint it. We have carpeting that's a tripping hazard, so, if you ignore that over a period of time and wait a year and a half to do it, and one person trips, you could have replaced the carpeting 5 times. So there's certain projects like that which have to take priority on a day-to-day operational basis. replacing windows, those, that can be postponed.
But really, my question is, do we already have a part of that 196K in hand?
Do we?
You can use a portion of the earnings from the investment accounts to do capital projects, yes.
But you don't have an 197 at your
No.
fingertips.
Right, but I'm just, when you look at, so you've got 1.6 rather than 1.9, but my sense was, the 196 was something that was identified as what we need to spend on maintenance, but that we already had a part of that in hand. And I didn't know how much that was, just trying to see what its contribution is, because obviously, I mean, it was rated third, I think, in terms of priorities of what people wanted to see get done. And
Yep.
obviously, they need to get done. I'm just trying to understand, is that truly 196K
Yeah.
that we got to raise in this capital campaign?
So I think they probably, at that point, vestry would say, okay, what is it that we absolutely have to get done that we don't have money for? And it may not be 197,000. So maybe there's, maybe there's 80,000 of projects that really have to get done that you're not gonna be able to cover by your annual next year or this year. And so that piece would be reduced, as with other things. So I think it gets down to that, that was everything that needs to be fixed. Well, maybe some of this could be piecemeal through some annual budgeting.
And one thing with a physical plant of this size, which no different than your home, you repair what you know you need to have repaired this year, and next year it's something else. So the fact that you make the repairs now, some of the capital improvements will put off big repairs down the line, but you're gonna have other things that are gonna come out just because of the size of the physical plant.
Thank you.
Hey, how do we make sure that the capital campaign doesn't starve off the annual campaign and we don't have any of this maintenance money, or people start thinking that way?
So that's a decision that's gonna be made through vestry. I think with timing, realistically, you're going to be looking at least the second phase of your campaign in the fall with your annual. And I can talk with Charlotte and vestry more, but it's April, May, June. You've got usually about 2 months of planning and evaluating, and you're gonna have to figure out where your numbers are and being really solid before you can even get to the brochure piece. I prefer doing dual campaigns, a campaign with the annual included. You've got people's attention, you've got concentrated attention, you're gonna have a lot of people calling on people and having conversations. Having the annual as part of that is telling the gifter, the donor, this is what my annual is. And we have so it's 2 pledge cards, capital campaign and annual pledge card. And I would be going and speaking to you about the capital campaign, what we're looking for. This total is about 4 times your annual. So if you look at this straight numerically, you're asking people to consider 4 times their annual.
Or 1.9 or 1.6?
1.6.
Our pledging is 475,000 for this year.
So somebody do the math. It's over 3?
Yeah, so, okay.
3.5?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask you for 4 times your annual. To consider that. If everybody gave 4 times their annual to the campaign, you'd go over goal, right? Everybody can't do that, obviously. There are people giving all they can for their annual, and that's the priority, and that's what you stress when you're speaking to people. That message gets lost sometimes when you're doing a capital campaign outside of the annual campaign. No matter how many times you say it, write it in the sky, preach it from the pulpit, people still will say, I'll just give my money to the capital campaign this year. So when you're talking about both, you can really stress the importance of that. And then people can really thoughtfully think, okay, can I do 4 times? Well, that's out of the, maybe I could do 2 times, but you're starting to talk in multiples of your annual. Rather than go, hey, we were hoping you could maybe give $10,000. Now, some people can give more. Some people may have indicated more of that in their range of giving on the feasibility study, so that's where you make up for it. Some people can do more than that. They're taking from different pots of money, from invested funds or stock, but that's the gist. So when you're having a discussion about that, when we do an annual insert, so it goes inside your capital campaign brochure, talking about the areas of ministry and the percentage of budget allocated. So they're looking at 2 different things. It's somebody talking to a new homeowner. Here's your basic costs for having this house. Here's your extraordinary costs for having the house. Does that clear that up? And I know it's counterintuitive, but it really, if you're messaging it right, it should not take away from your annual. It may take away from an annual bump for the first year, but once people are used to stretching further or really considering this, it's hopefully there'd be a bump when you've done the payout. Where people say, well, I don't necessarily have to drop down to where I was. Other questions?
Can you, on the 3-year campaign, you can give the money in any one of those year periods. Like, it doesn't have to be stretched out for 3, if you want to give it in 2,
Right.
correct, whatever.
I have a funny story about, I just did finishing up a church campaign in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and a gentleman came up to me and he said, well, the 3 years, here I was like, I said I was gonna give this amount in December and then I'm gonna give this amount in February. And my wife said, why? Why didn't you just take, it was all coming out of the same place. She's like, why don't you just, and he goes, I don't know. I just felt like I needed to break it up. You're absolutely right. With a capital campaign, a lot of the cash comes in early because people are taking from different pots of money. If you're taking this out of your annual income, you're gonna pay it more incrementally. So you have the choice. You can pay it in a year, you can pay it in 3 years, you can pay it once a year for 3 years, or you can pay it weekly or monthly. So all of that's open.
And it doesn't matter, like, if you back end it, that doesn't matter, like, if you don't give the first year.
Right, yeah. You'll get updates. It'll have your total pledge and then what you've paid on it. And it's just easier to let the office know if you have an intention, like in 3 years, I'm gonna have a matured something or other and I wanna give then, or, yeah.
Joe, give any instructions or information about, there are some people for whom this increase in the standard deduction basically no longer has them in the giving, and one way to get around or to deal with that is to set up a personalized foundation that you fund and then give. And it seems like something like this would maybe tip the balance for some people to want to do that. Do you ever come out and explain to people how that can be done?
So ECF, as of this past year, has established a donor advised fund. This is something you may really want to look. There's a lot of excitement, and it just coincided with the taxes and all. But it's a fund that you put your money in, and then you make your charitable donations out of that fund. So you get the tax. I believe you get the tax credit
in 1 year.
Yes.
In 1 year.
Yes.
Yeah, from that gift.
I work for a company who does donor advised funds.
Okay. Yep, so that's an option, it doesn't have to be through ECF. We do all of the planned giving, we have all the planned giving options as pooled income funds and remainder trusts and gift remainder trusts and all that. So, any of that information, if you wanna know more, I can give you the name. We can put it, you know, if you all are interested in looking into it, I'd have you call Jim Murphy at ECF, and he can send you stuff, or I wonder if I should just send brochures and you could have them. Okay, all right, let me do that. Yeah, we're excited about it, because it's really, people are really interested in it now. Thank you. You teed that up perfectly.
I'm just finishing my text.
Yeah, we've been through that shock ourselves. We forgot our daughter was no longer a dependent. It sure doesn't feel that way. I'm like, what's the definition of a dependent? Are they dependent on you?
Your stuff in the basement.
Yeah.
Or the attic.
And you're still wiring the money for rent, you know?
Are you talking about daughters, granddaughters, and so on?
Yeah, I think grandchildren should be dependents too. Any thoughts from the vestry? Charlotte, anything you want to share with your next steps?
No, just that the vestry is gonna be looking at all of this and sort of deciding what projects will be done, can be done with for the 1.6 that we think we can raise.
Yeah, so they have to get more serious about those numbers. You gotta go back, you gotta talk to who's gonna do the construction. I will tell you, you have at least the DNA from Hudson, the Christchurch Exeter, where my husband is the priest, just did a huge renovation of our 50s parish hall. And Steve Portalupi was basically our project manager. And he held that construction company to every outlet, every light switch, every nail put in there, and came in under budget. I think he got it $60,000 under budget. So he probably would. He loves it. So I know he's my reference now in New Hampshire. You want to talk to somebody who knows what you have to do? But yeah, it's watching the projects. It sounds like you guys have some people who know a thing or two about this sort of work, which is priceless. I mean, it is a gift. So no pressure.
You and Steve could be in communication.
That's right.
Yeah, you can call Steve, definitely.
Yeah.
You could
Give him
Zoom.
a place to stay so he can come back.
That's right.
I'll put him up.
All right, well, I have to remember to get those brochures to you. The bound copies, again, of the full report are gonna be coming if you wanna take a look, if you're eager to see it now. Is it going on the website?
Yes.
Yeah, it'll go on the website.
Okay,
Good.
And we'll send the PowerPoint out by email tomorrow also.
okay.
About when will the report be available?
I think it's at the printer, so Tuesday? I don't know, whenever, this week.
But online will be this week, is that right?
This will be online this week,
This will,
Not the-
oh,
but not the full
not the
complete
report?
report.
Okay.
But it could be emailed to you. Okay, I think we're done. Well, good job, all of you, and I'm excited for the campaign. I think you've all paid attention, and the response rate was fabulous. Comments all point in an exciting direction, so I look forward to being back with you.
Thank you.